All right, guys, welcome back. This practice is dedicated to the hips, mostly stabilizing as we hug in. And it would be best to have 2 blocks. 1 block will be fine, and we'll place them towards the front of our mat. And we'll get started. Come on to your backs. You can bend the knees, the soles of the feet flat to the earth, and just take a second to ground. So close the eyes. Focus in on the breath. Maybe even here you start to visualize what the hip looks like. All the muscles that work together to make it stable and strong, but flexible. As we move on, we'll extend the left leg out, and you can kind of just relax it. We'll bring the right knee in towards our chest. We're just going to play a little bit with what the hip can do. So we'll extend the legs straight. You can take some internal rotation, some external rotation. You can even start to find some circles, and they can be little or big. Anything that just kind of creates some movement for you within the hip. Maybe you trace a figure 8 with the toes and the knee. Maybe you find some deeper external rotation, pull it across the body. As you extend it out, you can move it away from the midline or adduct it back towards the midline, and then relax it down. Just kind of lay there for a second. Notice just what that little bit of movement did to the right hip compared to the left. We'll do the same thing, pulling the left leg in, extending it straight up. External rotation, some internal rotation. Point and flex the feet. You can start to find little circles or bigger circles, whatever you're comfortable with. You can even bend the knee. Imagine that femur kind of moving around within the socket. Maybe some deeper external rotation, bring it across the body. Extend it back out, away from the midline, and back in, and then let it relax. We'll roll off to our right side. I like to cradle my head with my hand, and we want the bottom knee to pull in, and then the top leg to extend out, and we'll try not to bring it in front of us or even behind us, but just straight out from the hip as if we were standing. And we're going to kind of really bring our awareness to the outer hip here and the firing of glute medius as we lift that leg just about 6 inches off of the ground. You can flex the foot, so the inner thigh and the inner edge of the foot are reaching towards the earth. And once we have that, we can even place our hand here and kind of feel what turns on and off as we tap the legs down, and then we lift it back up. So tap the toes down and lift. No need to go higher than just 6 inches. And so we'll come back to that sensation here on the outer hip as we move through the asana. Just kind of tapping into that right now. You kind of start to feel it tire out or activate. Just a few more taps. And then we'll lift, just extend out, pull the ribs in, then go ahead and relax. So even just that little movement, we start to feel these outer hips turn on and fire, possibly even tire out. Again, we'll come back to that. It'll be more important as we move through this asana. And we'll come to the opposite side. So laying off to our left hip. You can cradle the head. If that's not comfortable, you can drop the head down. Bottom knee is going to pull in. Again, that right leg is going to extend straight out from the hip. So the inner thigh, inner edge of that foot faces the ground. We'll pull our floating ribs in just to have some control there. We'll take our right hand to the outside of the right hip. Again, lift the leg just about 6 inches. We feel the outer hip turn on, and we'll take those taps. So inner edge touches down and then lifts up just 6 inches. It's just a little bit of movement, but it's a lot of bit of sensation. Belly's with you just a little bit. And if the hand is on the outer hip, we can actually feel the muscle engage and then release as we tap. A few more like that. And then we'll go ahead and lift. Just hover again about 6 inches. Outside of the leg is flat. We'll feel that sensation. Remember what it feels like later on in the practice. Hold it there for one more breath. And we'll go ahead and relax it down. Come on up and move into tabletop. We're going to play with the same sensations here in the hip, just from a different position. So we'll stack our shoulders over our elbows. Again, just like we learned in our shoulder, we're going to slightly externally rotate and find that stability here with the shoulder. Belly pulls in just a little bit. We'll start with the left leg this time. We just want to be aware of not hanging out in the lumbar, so flat back, core is with you. And we're going to start to just lift the left knee. From there, lifting out to the side, so inner thigh once again, and the inner edge of the foot face down towards the ground. So as we lift the left leg up, about hip height or to your capacity, it doesn't have to be large to activate the outside of the hip. We just want to stabilize, so we don't want to find a lot of movement to lift this leg. Arms are straight, micro bend into the elbows. Again, just trying to tire out or to feel this muscle turn on. We'll stick with that for a few more breaths. Inhale, lengthen it out. Exhale, tap it down. This next set, go ahead and lift. We'll flex the foot just to keep everything active. Pull the belly in, extend through the crown of the head. Feel that outside hip really turn on. And exhale, drop it down. We'll do the same thing opposite side. So stack it up, belly pulls in. We'll lift the right knee, make sure the core's with you. As you inhale, pull that leg up and then drop down. So our focus here is mostly on not allowing the rest of the body to kind of hang out, but to be really active, minimizing the movement in the hips. So inner thigh and inner edge of the foot start to shine towards the ground. And 2 more times. On that last set, leave the leg out, flex the foot, pull the belly in, press into the earth, hold and hover. And then exhale, drop it down. Shake out the hands a little bit if you need to. And before we move into down dog, we'll just find a few sets of cat and cow to warm up the spine. As you feel ready to inhale, drop the belly. Pull the shoulder blades towards each other as you look up. Exhale, round. Remember, create that space between scapula, chin towards chest. Inhale, take a look up. Exhale, cat. Once more. Come back into our neutral spine. Preparing for that downward facing dog, extend the arms out, pivot the toes. Go ahead and lift the hips. Drop the heels down, melt the heart towards the thighs. And press evenly into the feet and to the hands. And if you need any movements here to feel comfortable or start to open up the back body, feel free to do what's calling. And we'll take a few breaths here. On your next in-breath, we'll lift the heels, bend the knees. Go ahead, take a look past the hands and walk up, forward fold at the front of your mat. When you get there, take an inhale, prepare, just go ahead and lengthen. Exhale, drop down, and we're gonna bend the knees. Enough that the chest and the belly can rest on the thighs. Grab opposite elbows and let the head hang here. Let the shoulders move towards the ears if that feels organic. Create some space between the molars. Just open up that back body. Sometimes it's nice to sway here, even pedal the knees. And go ahead and release the hands. As you're looking down at the toes, we're going to come into chair, so bring the toes together. Heels can be slightly apart. We'll bend into the knees and squeeze the knees together as you rise up. Inhale and find your chair pose. So looking at me from the side first, we'll tilt our tailbone down. Frontal hip bones move closer to the ribs. Core is engaged. Arms can be up or they can be at your hips. That doesn't really matter in this practice. And I'll turn towards you so that we can kind of play with what we're going for here. So in this chair pose, I want you to take your hands to your outer hips. And this is an isometric movement, so we're not actually going to see movement, but we're going to kind of visualize the knees almost pressing out. So as the knees press out, the outer hips turn on. It's a little movement. Again, a lot of sensation. We're going to do the same thing with the knees, but this time we're going to press the knees together, squeezing together, and the inner thighs start to turn on. Now, can we keep that happening in the outer hips and the inner thighs at the same time as we hold chair? So a lot going on. Just focus on the breath. And take an exhale, forward fold. Now we're going to stay with that, just moving a little bit quicker through breath. So as you inhale, go ahead and brush the ground. Squeeze the knees together, turn on the inner thighs, but that isometric movement of also pressing out so the outer thighs turn on, find chair. And exhale, drop down. So we're turning on and turning off. As you inhale, bring it on up. When you're ready for the exhale, bring it on down. Inhale, chair. Turn the hips on. Exhale, forward fold. One more time. Inhale, rise up to chair, stack the shoulders, tilt the tailbone, find the core. Inner and outer hips are turning on. Lots of sensation in the legs already. And we'll take a full inhale, reach up towards the sky. And exhale, hands to heart center. All right, so we'll move into our tree pose, but first we're going to work on our stance just a little bit. So our feet are going to be hip distance, and I want you to actually put your hands on your glutes, glute max here. And as we're standing, we want to be sure that we're not clenching, we're not squeezing in as much as we can. So it should be tone. You should know that there's some activation happening, but not to your capacity. So just toned glutes. So we'll keep that as we move into tree. And a lot of awareness of kind of hanging out in this hip. So we're going to have that action of hugging in, activating the outer hip. And when the left foot moves into the inner right thigh, we have the inner thigh pressing out into the foot and the foot pressing in. So there's this action of pressing together that not only gives you lift, but reminds you to turn the hip on. So we'll start right foot down, slight bend into the right knee. Immediately, maybe you even hang out for a second so you know the difference, and then hug in. And we'll take the left foot up. Now, if you're more comfortable with the foot on the ground or the calf, absolutely keep it there for tree. So as you come in, again, think about the glutes or glute max just being tone. Right hip is squeezing in, hugging in. And then you have this resistance between the foot and the inner thigh. The hands move to heart center. Pause there. Set your drishti somewhere in front of you. Pull the shoulders over the hips. And just focus on your breath. All right, we'll drop out of the right side. Shake it out if you need to. And we'll switch sides. Left foot will come down to center. And go ahead and hang out in the hip first so you feel that kind of lazy hanging out of the hip. We're going to change it by hugging in, lifting in and out of the joint. Slight bend into the knee, and then the right toes are going to pop up. So again, they can stay on the floor. You can bring them to the calf or the inner thigh. Create the resistance between the foot pressing in and the inner thigh pressing out. And hands can move to heart center. If you're more comfortable, allowing the arms to rise, that's your choice. Just a few breaths here. Again, come back to the glutes working with you, but not clenching. And the outer hip hugging in, and then we're lifting in and up. One more breath. And then we'll go ahead and release out of that. Shake it out as you come to the front of your yoga mat. Feet hip distance and parallel. We'll find mountain pose, so palms face forward. You can close the eyes if you want to sink in here for a second. Imagine the inner thighs turning out and back. All four corners of the feet pressing down. Again, glutes are toned but not clenched. Glute max. As you inhale, reach the arms up, take a look up. Exhale, swan dive forward. Inhale, half lift, lengthen, look forward. As we exhale, bend the knees, plant the palms. We'll step back for a high plank pose. And pause there for a few breaths. So shoulders over elbows, heels on top of toes, sternum forward. Inhale, lengthen. Exhale, bend the elbows as the feet press you forward. Inhale, up dog or cobra. Exhale, roll over the toes, downward facing dog. Take a few breaths there. On your next in-breath, we'll float the right leg up towards the sky. And we can go ahead and bend, open, and stretch. So we start to feel the front of the right hip open up. That same sensation can happen with that leg straight. It's kind of warming up those hip flexors. And as you exhale, bring that foot forward, step in between the hands. Inhale, lengthen. Exhale, just soften. And coming into crescent lunge or high lunge, start to pull yourself up. So we'll create the foundation because we're going to come back to this pose a few different times. About a 90-degree bend in that front knee. If we can track the kneecap over the center toe and also over the heel. Hips are closed. Bring the arms up, tailbone slightly down. That back knee can be bent if that feels more comfortable. Floating ribs sip in, so we're controlled. And then this is where we're going to come into our blocks. So if you want to reach down and prepare, they're going to be in front of us. Again, if you only have one block, it's totally okay. But we're going to come into supported Digasana or Warrior 3. Inhale, lengthen and crescent lunge. And as you exhale, pitch yourself halfway forward. Hands will come to the blocks. You can use that back leg to launch you. And we'll lift up to a supported Warrior 3. And let's go ahead and bend the right knee for a second. What we're trying to avoid, or what we're trying to be really aware of, is that sinking into the hip on the right side. So same thing as that tree, you're going to hug in, lifting in and out of the joint. We have internal rotation on the left side, so that the pinky toe faces the ground. Lengthen through the spine. As we release, we're going to come right back into that chair pose. So can you turn it all back on just like we started? Inhale, rise up, tailbone down. Knees squeeze in to activate inner thighs, and then they slightly isometrically push out to activate outer hips. Let's bring our hands to our hips this time. What we're focusing on here is not a lot of movement in the hips. We really want to keep them stable. As we float the left heel, we'll just start to step back as if we're coming into crescent and then step forward. So we're just tapping the toes back and bringing them forward. Again, hugging in on the right side, lifting or having that sensation of lifting in and out. Really strong and stable with this right leg. Let's go 2 more times. Last set. Chair pose. Sink down for your exhale. Inhale, rise up. Exhale, swan dive forward. Inhale, prepare, look forward. Exhale, this time we're just going to step back, downward facing dog. One full breath. Next, inhale, left leg will rise up. Go ahead and bend the knee, open the hip. Avoid kind of opening the chest here. So we just want the hip to start to open. We feel that stretch in the front of the left hip. Again, you can create the same stretch. Maybe it's even a little bit deeper if the leg is straight and pulls over the body. Exhaling, bring the left foot in between the hands. Low runner's lunge, inhale and lengthen. Exhale, ground down, soften. We'll inhale, rise up, crescent lunge, high lunge. Few breaths here. Now we're going to come into that supported warrior 3. Focus is really on staying high and strong in the left hip. So we'll lean the weight forward. Again, it's best to use blocks here just so we can really bring that awareness into the hip and launch yourself up. You can even take a look back at the right toes. So we're avoiding that external rotation. We're going to take the pinky toe towards the ground, slight bend into the left knee, and then you're hugging in and out. So avoiding kind of relaxing into it, but activating and finding that full stability on the left side. Pause there for a breath or two. And again, we're going to release it down. Find chair. Come right into it. Inhale, arms rise up. I like to bring my hands to my hips, just to ensure there's not a lot going on there. It's stable. Pop the right heel. Tilt the tailbone down, and then start to step back. Tap the toes. Back and forward. Make sure one hip doesn't hike up higher than the other. We're still hugging in and up in the left hip. A few more rounds. Last set here. Bring it right into chair. Inhale and lengthen. Exhale, sink it down. Inhale, rise up. Exhale, swan dive forward. Inhale, half lift. And once again, as we exhale, plant the palms. We'll just step it back, downward facing dog. And take a breath or two. Remember to squeeze the outer arms in, that slight external rotation Control through the shoulder. Now we'll add on to that sequence just a bit. Inhale, right leg will rise. Exhale, bend the knee, open the hip. Inhale, re-lengthen. Exhale, step the foot forward. Moving in to crescent lunge. So we've been here a few times. We won't be here long. We're going to take our hands to our hips. And we're going to add on to that stability. So right off the bat, hug in, lift out, find your core, shoulders over the hips. We'll lean the weight forward, and this time we're going to bring the left knee all the way hip height. So we're using that psoas as that hip flexor to pull the knee in and up, but then hugging in on the right side for the stability. And then slow motion, I find the slower you go, the more you can actually feel. Step back, high lunge. So now we're stretching the front of the left hip. Same thing, so hands on hips, just to ensure that there's not a lot of movement, there's lots of stability. Slow motion is good, lean forward. Put the weight into that right foot as you pull the left knee hip height. Take a breath there and then step back. So if that feels like too much movement for you, you can always bring the foot forward. Maybe it taps first down into chair, and then it lengthens up. So you can always kind of modify to find where you're comfortable. I'll do a few sets like that. And then one more set. Bring it on up. Think about pulling the left hip back or the left femur into the socket so you have that kind of suction sensation. Right hip squeezes in, and we lift in and up once again, lengthen through the crown of the head. This time we're going to step back and find warrior two. So you can fidget until you feel like you have that placement. We'll do a heel to arch or heel to heel intersection, about a 90-degree bend into the front knee. What we're focusing on is pushing the knee slightly out towards the pinky toe, but we want patella or kneecap tracking over the center toe. So we're going to equally engage all the quads here. We have that external rotation in the front leg. And we're protecting the kneecap. Hips are even. Extend the arms out. Take a look forward. Notice in this warrior two, so we know piriformis is an external rotator. And in this position, we can feel that right hip pull in and under us. And that's the action of the piriformis. Sink down. Just another breath. Now we'll keep that foundation we created. Peaceful warrior. Left arm down the left thigh. Reach up and over. Think about creating some space between the ribs. And exhale. Cartwheel all the way around. And step back. Downward facing dog. On the in-breath, left leg rises. Go ahead and exhale, open the hip. Inhale, re-lengthen. Exhale, bring the knee in. Step forward. Inhale, lengthen. Exhale, just soften. Inhale, rise on up. High lunge. Again, I like to bring my hands to my hips as we move through these. If you feel better with your arms at heart center or out, it's completely up to you. With the hands on the hips, we just ensure that we can feel if the hips are moving. So we'll lean forward, adding on to that flow. We'll put the weight into the left foot and bring the right knee up. So we're not hinging, we're hugging in. We know that psoas is working as we bring that right knee hip height. And then step it back. Now it's stretching. Right frontal hip gets that nice stretch. And then we'll stick with that. Pull the floating ribs in, engage the core, sink forward. Even here, hug in. Set up that strong foundation as you bring the right knee up. And then sink it back. I find a lot of times the faster we move, the more movement we get here. So slow and steady, feeling everything turn on, and then slowly settle down. Remember, you can step that right foot forward first and find a little bit of a chair, and then lengthen the right leg up. You can even bring it back down into chair and step it back. So choosing a modification that allows you to feel most stable. I'm going to take it just a little bit further. Remember, trying not to hike a hip up higher than the other. Last set, bring it up. So we'll take a slight bend into that left knee, hug in, lift up. Right hip or femur is pulling back, shoulders are stacked. This time as we release out, we're going to find a warrior two. Again, fidget as many times as you need to feel in position. We have the left leg externally rotating, the kneecap once again tracking over the center toe, and we feel piriformis here. You can probably see it better. We don't want to pop the hip out. We want to squeeze it in and under the shoulders. And again, that's the action of turning things on. Piriformis pulling the hip in. Warrior two. Find a breath. Flip the front palm, peaceful warrior, stretch through side body. Be aware of what's happening in that front knee still. Exhale, cartwheel the arms around. Step back, downward facing dog. Few breaths here. So this time we won't lift the right leg, but go ahead and take a look in between the hands. As you exhale, step the right foot forward. We're gonna bring the lower portion of the body into warrior one. So the back foot is gonna pivot and flatten. It's about hip distance in the feet so that we can pull the left hip forward as we pull the right femur back. Now, tendency is that we kind of just float up using a lot of the back muscles. But this makes a lot of sense to me. This is the rooting down to rise up. So we're gonna pull the right hip back, ground down into both feet, and then we start to feel glute max turn on here on the right side. And can we use more of the foundation of this right hip and the stability of our left hip to lift us up rather than the back? So again, ground down, turn the muscles on. When you feel stable, maybe you float the fingertips, and inhale, press into the feet. Rise up, warrior one. Inhale, lengthen. Exhale, drop the hands. Let's step back into high plank this time. Sternum forward. Use the balls of the feet. Inhale and lengthen. Exhale and bend. Inhale, rise up, up dog or cobra. Exhale, roll it back, downward facing dog. Remember, those vinyasas are always optional. And again, without lifting that left leg, just find the core as you exhale, step the left foot in between the hands. Setting up for warrior one. So the back foot will pivot and flatten, hip distance between the feet. We know that the kneecap is still tracking over the center toe. We're gonna pull the right hip back, find the glute. You can even put your hand, left hip. You can put your hand on your hip and you can feel that action of turning on. So left hip pulls back, right hip pulls forward. We feel a little bit of a stretch in the front of the right hip. And think about the hips, the glutes, the strength from the hips, allowing you to root and to rise rather than the back. warrior one. Let the shoulders relax and just sink back to your breath. Inhale, lengthen. Exhale, drop the hands down. We'll step it back once more into high plank. Maybe you just hold here. Inhale, look forward. Exhale, bend. Chaturanga. Inhale, up dog or cobra. Open the chest. Remember, pull the shoulder blades towards each other. Exhale, roll over the toes. Downward facing dog. So we'll come back to that flow just once more on each side. Inhale, we can reach the right leg up. Exhale, step it forward. A little bit quicker. We know what we're doing, the actions we're taking. Inhale, rise, high lunge. As you exhale, pitch the chest halfway forward. Stay strong in the right hip as you come into that supported warrior three. Feeling that hugging in, the lifting out, the stability in the right hip. Sink it back, warrior two. Again, piriformis, hugging in, right hip is under you. Inhale, peaceful. To exhale, step it back, downward facing dog. So a little bit more fluid. Inhale, left leg rises. Exhale, step it forward. Inhale, high lunge, crescent lunge. As you pitch the chest forward, hug in, lift out. You know where you're going, warrior three. Bend into that left knee. Remember, slowly step back. You can open the arms up, warrior two. Inhale, find your peaceful. And exhale, come on out and downward facing dog. We're going to move down to our backs. So if you'd like to add a vinyasa as you come down, you can. If you're working a jump through, you can go for it. And the rest of us, maybe just come down to the knees and swing the feet forward. All right. So flat to our backs. Let's ground down into the feet. We're going to find bridge. So as you inhale, think about those frontal hip bones rising up towards the sky and the chest chasing the chin as the chin moves away from the chest. So maybe you pull the shoulder blades underneath you just a bit as the hips rise up. It doesn't have to be your biggest bridge. What we're going to focus on here is glute max. I actually want you to bring your hands to glute max and notice the difference, if you can notice the difference between your upper glute max and your lower. And I want you to see if you can turn the upper slightly off, so there's no clenching here at all. Maybe the upper glute max is toned. And then feel lower glute max and see if you can turn that on, fire it, and use that as the momentum or the turning on to lift the hips into bridge. And if you have felt the glutes and you can feel that firing, then maybe you keep it. Interlace the hands underneath the back. Retract the shoulder blades towards each other. Lift the hips. Remember, chest towards chin, but chin away from chest. We'll unbind the hands first, wiggle the arms out, sink the hips down, And just take a breather. Maybe you knock the knees together, feet mat distance. We'll have some internal rotation with the hips, letting the low back relax or release. We'll go through that bridge just once more so that we can really know what it feels like and the difference between upper and lower glute. So from here, feet parallel. Lift frontal hip bones up towards the sky. Again, doesn't have to be your biggest bridge. And then bring your hands to your glute max. So upper glute max, closest to your sacrum, is going to be toned. It's going to be turned on but not clenched. Lower glute max, you should feel it right off the bat. It feels like it's doing a little bit more work, and we want it to. So press into the feet, lift it up. Keep all of that going. Squeeze the shoulder blades underneath the back. Just take a few breaths. When you're ready to release, drop the glutes back down. Once more, knock the knees together, feet mat distance. Roll the shoulder blades out, palms can face up. We'll start to now work the inner thighs. And we might just take a stretch first. So soles of the feet will come together, knees out, Supta Baddha Konasana. This is going to feel different for everyone, so you'll just know your own capacity of where you want to go with this. But we want the inner edges of the feet to always be touching. Arms can be wherever you like. I actually like them behind my head for this one. So relax the upper body. Relax the glutes. What we're focusing on is the firing of the adductors to adduct, to bring the knees closer to each other. So let's bring the knees up as close as we can without allowing the feet to touch the ground. So inner edges of the feet are still touching. Squeeze in. We feel the inner thighs turn on, just like we did in that chair pose when the knees squeeze towards each other. And then drop them down. Let those inner thighs relax. Same thing. Inhale, squeeze together. Exhale, drop down. And even when you're dropping down, we can always just let gravity kind of bring the knees down towards the ground, but let's act as if we're kind of moving through honey. So exhale, control the release. And just work with your breath. Inhaling to squeeze up, squeeze inner thighs towards each other. Exhale, control the mindful release. We'll stick with this just a few more times, kind of tiring out those inner thighs. And this time, as the knees come together, if that's your capacity, you're all the way up, we're just going to come halfway down this time. So we keep the adductors firing, and then we're going to squeeze in and let them come halfway out. And so there's not really any relaxation as we come down halfway. We're still working, feeling the inner thighs firing, but working a little bit more to squeeze towards each other. And now we'll take the knees all the way down, and we'll continue with that just for a few more rounds. So we'll bring the knees, if they're all the way down or all the way open, we'll bring them halfway up and then all the way down. We'll skip halfway, we'll come all the way up. Halfway down, all the way up, and then all the way down. Halfway up, all the way down. Go all the way up, squeeze together. Halfway down, all the way up. Let them relax down. Last set. Halfway. And release. And squeeze all the way up. Halfway down. Squeeze, it's your last big squeeze, inner thighs moving towards each other. And then go ahead and release all the way out, Supta Baddha Konasana. So now we'll just let everything relax. Allow the inner thighs to fall out. If this is too much on your inner thighs, you can always place blocks underneath the knees. So we're just going to take a second to relax. Everything is pressing against the earth. Hands can be wherever you feel they need to go. And just drop into the breath. Notice how the inner thighs feel. Remember the strength in hugging in. The outer hips hug in as we lift in and out of the hip joint. And since we did a lot of work to glute med, we'll go ahead and stretch it out. You can bring the knees together. Hands can always help you if you need to. We'll come into Supine Gomukhasana. So knees will come into the chest and then lengthen the legs up. We'll take the right knee on top of the left. I like to kind of wiggle with my arms and get everything in place. If this doesn't feel available to you, you might just be able to kind of cross. Maybe the left foot is down and the right leg just kind of crosses over, and so you feel the outer hip begin to open or stretch. If you can come into that full Gomukhasana, we'll bring the knees over the hips. We'll lift as if we're coming into a crunch. Maybe flex the feet. You can either grab the outsides of the legs or the outsides of the feet, and then relax head, neck, and shoulders back down towards the ground. So this action of pulling the feet not only up towards the heart, but then also a bit towards the ground, and it's just subtle. We start to feel a deeper stretch in the outside of the right hip. Head, neck, and shoulders relaxed. You can go ahead and close the eyes and breathe it into the outer right hip. Unbind from there. Come back to center. Maybe shake the legs out if you need to. Switching sides. Left leg will come over right. Again, if that's not feeling available, maybe the right leg or the right foot touches the ground. The left leg kind of just come across, just like you're in a seated position in a chair, and we start to feel the outer left hip begin to stretch. Or we have full supine Gomukhasana. Bringing the knees to stack on top of each other. Again, lifting up just to find the bind. So hands to the outsides of the shins or to the outsides of the feet. Once you have that, relax head, neck, and shoulders back down. You can use a little bit of the upper arms to not only pull the feet towards the ground, but then slightly up towards the heart. Sacrum flat. Again, relax upper body as much as you can. Breathing into the outer left hip. One more big breath. We'll unbind. So we'll squeeze the knees in towards the chest, maybe rocking a little bit side to side, and massage the low back. And coming into a twist, we'll let the left leg extend all the way onto the ground. We'll reach the right leg up towards the sky. So if the hamstring's really tight, you can always have a bend in the knee. We're going to take the left hand, and it can either be to the outside of the right thigh, the outside of the right calf, or the outside of the foot. If we take our right hand into the right hip crease and ensure that the right hip stays down for this first stretch, we're just going to pull the right leg slightly across the body. We can start to feel kind of that outer hip stretch, maybe even a little bit from behind the knee all the way up into the hip. And we'll continue with this as we allow the right leg to drop all the way out. If it touches the ground, or maybe use a prop underneath the right knee, a bolster, a blanket, a block. We'll take the right arm out, right shoulder blade towards the ground, and then chin over the right shoulder. So allowing this outer hip to stretch. Relax everything, let it go. Moving to the opposite side, we may bend the right knee first. Pull the hips back to center. Knees in towards the chest once more. Little rock. Reset everything. Extend the right leg out. Let it relax. Left leg will rise up. Remember, if you have a tight hamstring, bend the knee. We'll take our right hand to the outside edge of the left thigh, the left calf, or the left foot. If we're reaching up for that foot, we also want to pull the humeral head back down towards the ground so that we're engaged but also relaxed. And then left peace fingers can kind of come into that left hip crease, right on the frontal hip bone, maybe even a little bit deeper. Ensure that the hip doesn't lift right off the bat. So left glute or left hip is touching the ground. And then just a slight pull across the body. Maybe we consider this a little bit of a stretch around the IT band. And it doesn't take much as you come across the body to feel that kind of stimulated, maybe behind the knee and the outside of the hip. We'll continue with that, allowing that left leg to drop all the way out to the right. And you can keep the bind if you want to. You can let it go, relaxing that down. Taking the chin over the left shoulder, extending that left arm out, left shoulder blade towards the mat. And go ahead and relax. Breathe into the outside of the left hip. Everything that we ask to turn on and fire to find the stability or the strength within the hip. One more breath here. As we come out, we'll move the chin to neutral first. Maybe we bend that left knee, pull the hips back to center. Again, maybe a little bit of a windshield wiper of the knees side to side. Let everything go in the hips, the low back, as we move into Shavasana. So we'll take up some space on the mat. Let the glutes completely relax this time. Palms face up, shoulder blades flat against the mat. Take a deep breath and fill up. Open the mouth side out. Really let everything go. Maybe you wiggle the feet a bit. Everything relaxes. Coming back into that visualization of the round head of the femur and sitting inside the socket of the hip. Lots of mobility, but as we hug in, we find that strength, the stability. One more big breath, fill up. Exhale, let it go. as always, choosing to stay in Shavasana as long as you need. Namaste.